Starting with the introduction to the life of the divine incarnation as a spiritual aspirant, we are going through the subheading Attitude of a Sadhaka in Incarnation. Here, in the last class, we were discussing about the scriptures say that the two distinct conceptions of the world arise in us when we look at it from two planes of consciousness. The one is the non-dual, Advaita, and the dual, Dvaita. Just as the thing called the world is seen in two different ways from the two above mentioned planes, so also a particular person in it is seen as two different beings from those two planes of consciousness. Seen from the plane of duality, he is known as a man in worldly bondage, and seen from the infinite non-dual plane as Brahman, eternally free and eternally pure. The infinite non-dual plane is the highest region in the realm of ideas. The human mind passes through higher and higher planes of consciousness and reaches the non-dual plane. Which is the goal. While the mind of the aspirant ascends to those higher and higher regions, both the universe and a particular individual in it assume for him different forms, and his previous conception of them change in various ways. For example, to him, the world then seems to be made of ideas only, and a particular individual appears to be separate from the body and endowed with extraordinary powers, or made up of mind or of light celestial. At one point, we have to remember when Ramakrishna was sitting in Dakshineshwar and he was looking at Latu, later on, who was called as Swami Adbhutananda. Then Ramakrishna was describing that he is also seeing Latu physically as now he's doing the work there. His name is Latu. But at the same time, Ramakrishna tells that he could also see that his body was just like a pillowcase, and inside which was the consciousness. He could see the consciousness too. And the body was looking like a pillowcase. And in the pillowcase, you see the inner stuff. So likewise, Ramakrishna was seeing the Atman or Paramatma Swarupa inside his body. Externally, it was just like some body. So he was having both the experiences. We should also see that when his elder brother's son, Akshay Kumar, he was on the verge of death, he was passing away. All the other relatives were so much wailing and crying. But Ramakrishna was laughing at that time. He was so joyful. Then Hridaya and other people asked him, questioned him, what is this, Mama? All were crying. Akshay Kumar passed away and you were laughing and you were joyful at that time. Then Ramakrishna told, Mother showed me that the sword, sword is kept inside a scabbard. Sword will have a protective shield. That is a scabbard. It's called scabbard. So it will be always kept inside that. Whenever they have to fight, they remove it from that. So just like that, the scabbard is cast away and the sword is taken out of it. I saw that the body was thrown away and the soul came out, was unsheathed from the scabbard, just like the sword was unsheathed from the scabbard. Likewise, I too could see, Divine Mother showed me that the Atman or Paramatma Swarupa came out of that casing called body and it went to its next state. So looking at that Atma Swarupa coming out of the body, I enjoyed that Akshay Kumar got liberation and he went up. So Ramakrishna could see both the things from the worldly, seeing the world and everything, from the plane of duality and also from the plane of non-duality. While the mind of the aspirant ascends to those higher and higher regions, both the universe and particular individuals in it assume for him different forms, and his previous conception of them change in various ways. For example, to him, the world then seems to be made of ideas only, and a particular individual appears to be separate from the body and endowed with extraordinary powers, or made up of mind or of the light celestial. If an ordinary man approaches an incarnation of God with devotion and reverence, he ascends unknowingly to the higher and higher planes of consciousness spoken of before. Now you can see what is the use of studying, what is the use of going through all these things. So if we, ordinary human beings, ordinary jivas, we approach an incarnation of God with devotion and reverence and study his life, understand why did he come down, what is the relationship between him and us. So that particular individual, that particular jiva that we are, who are studying his life, he ascends unknowingly. We are all ascending unknowingly to the higher and higher planes of consciousness spoken of before. So all of you are chosen few. All of you are very selected few by the master himself. So getting up, giving up all the sleep, early morning sleep in this cold winter, it was 2 degrees in Johannesburg in the morning when I saw. And even other people from different part of the world, they give up their work and they're coming and studying the life of Ramakrishna, the life of divine incarnation. So what will be the benefit? So now you can see Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, if an ordinary man, that is Jiva, that is all of us, approach an incarnation of God with devotion and reverence, he, that particular Jiva or living being, ascends unknowingly. So without our knowledge, we will be ascending to the higher and higher planes of consciousness spoken of before. Of course, he gets that power of ascension owing to the incarnation's wonderful powers. So we get the power to ascend to higher spiritual strata, not by our own physical effort or human effort. We get the power of ascension owing to the incarnation's wonderful powers. Viewing the incarnation from this newly acquired vantage ground, the devout aspirant recognizes him only as pure divinity and wonderful powers, and he therefore interprets the human elements in the incarnations as mere feeding out of compassion for the ordinary man. As his devotion grows deeper, the devout aspirant is seen at first to have that conception about these devotees of God and afterwards about the whole world, his creation. So it has already been stated that from their very childhood, these divine incarnations perceive the world of ideas with the same intensity and vividness as they see the objects of the world of senses. But as their power of higher perceptions develops, in course of time, they begin to attach more and more validity to the world of ideas, finally attaining to non-duality and the knowledge of the one without a second. That is the goal of every human being, of every living being. That is the goal where we are proceeding. So this process from which we are all the living beings, from the microbes up to the human beings, we are very fast, very speedy way, high velocity, we are moving towards that goal. That is that one without the second, non-dual Parabrahma. So we are all rushing towards that, whether we want or not. All of us are rushing. So like other Semitic religions, they tell that people who commit sin are doomed for eternity. That is all false. So there is only one life, and the day of judgment will come, and everybody will be good people will be liberated, bad people will be punished, put to eternal hell. No. Whatever you might have done, you have a chance to come out of it and get the freedom. Because internally, in essence, you are that Parabrahma Swarupa. So everybody has a chance. Maybe you have chosen the wrong way, but you have to undergo the purgation, or you have to, the karma will make you go down in evolution, and you have to undergo all that bad karmas you have done. But again, you have the infinite number of chances will be given for you to come up. We are all rushing towards that one goal. So, but when you approach, as Shardanandaji Maharaj told, the life of incarnation, approach an incarnation of God with devotion and reverence, he ascends unknowingly to the higher and higher planes of consciousness spoken of before. That thing, that one without a second. So finally attaining to non-duality, the knowledge of the one without a second, the origin of all the worlds, the origin of all the worlds of name and fame. They reach perfection and the acme of their powers. These facts are true also in the case of soul liberated to life, Jivan Mukta. A person who has already got liberation, even while living, even when he's having this body, is called Jivan Mukta. All of you can become Jivan Muktas, only the whatever the Guru has shown you the path, giving the mantra diksha. So if you do that mantra diksha, do the sadhana every day, more and more, gradually increasing it, and pray to the Lord for his vision, then you'll be liberated even in this life itself. They are called Jivan Muktas. So generally, if we just take a very slow approach and chalta hai mode, okay, I've got the mantra diksha, let me do it morning and evening, enjoy this worldly life. Okay, after the giving up of the body, you will get that same state. But those people who want to get it now, this second, this very in this very lifetime, then you have to do the sadhana, which is shown by the Guru. If you do that, you will become, even while living liberated. They are called Jivan Muktas, souls liberated in life. But there is the difference that they have to make a lifelong effort. We all of us have to just to reach that goal. One path and one idea which we have to realize. It will take whole of our lifetime. So, but there is the difference that they have to make a lifelong effort to attain this realization, whereas the incarnations do so in a very short time. For us, ordinary human beings, if it takes the whole lifetime to attain that truth, but for the incarnation, it will be a very short time. That's why you can see that short time also we can make our life, we can make our approach to that goal little speedier by approaching the divine incarnation with great reverence and faith. So the difference between the ordinary human beings like us who can become souls liberated in life, the difference is we have to make a lifelong effort to attain this realization, whereas the incarnations do so in very short time. Or even if they, the Jivan Mukta, succeed early, they manifest very little power. Suppose we realize God and we are now in this life liberated, and you will be doing good to the world and moving about as a realized soul. You can see such many saints. But what is the difference between them, Jivan Muktas, and incarnations? Or even if they, that is Jivan Muktas, succeed early, they manifest very little power of liberating others. They have the very little capacity. At the most, they may liberate 1 or 2 people or 10 or 100 people, that's all. They will have little capacity to liberate other people as compared with the divine incarnation. Ramakrishna himself used to tell, now we are going to see what is the statement of Sri Ramakrishna. There is the master saying on this point, the difference between the jiva, that is the ordinary living being, and an incarnation consists in the degree of manifestation of this power only. So a Jivan Mukta, or ordinary living being like us, at the most, after liberation, you may be like a twig floating on the water to carry 1 or 2 ants, or at the most some insects or animals. But the incarnation will be like a ship, a huge ship who can carry thousands and thousands of living beings to the other shore. That is to the non-dual reality, the one without the second. So that's why Ramakrishna is telling, both are same in essence. Both the Jivan Mukta, or the ordinary living being, and Paramatma Swarupa, that is the incarnations, Avatar Purusha, they are same in essence. Behind both of them, it is the same Parabrahma Swarupa, the Atma Swarupa, Paramatman. The essence, the consciousness behind us ordinary living beings is called Atman, and the essence behind the Avatar Purusha is called Paramatman. It's the same essence, we are in essence the same. But the manifestation of power is very huge, just like the goat and the elephant, or an ant and an elephant, or even a microbe and an elephant. Ajagajantara. In Sanskrit, it is called Ajagajantara. Huge difference. What is the difference? To liberate people, other people, to help other people to cross this Maya, this world of delusion, to help them to take them to the shore of realization. The capacity for the ordinary living being will be very less compared to the incarnation, that the power of the incarnation to liberate people, other people, and help other people to cross this ocean is very, very, very huge. That is the difference. Enjoying the immediate knowledge of the cause of the universe, the incarnations dwell for a while in the non-dual plane and then descend to the lower planes of the mind. Already they were in that non-dual, they are the essence of that non-dual thing. They come down for our sake. Now again, after doing sadhana and reaching that non-dual plane, they will be there for some time in that non-dual plane, experiencing that samadhi for a long time. So enjoying the immediate knowledge of the cause of the universe, the incarnations dwell for a while in the non-dual plane and then descend to the lower planes of the mind. In the eyes of the ordinary people, they still appear as human beings, very ordinary. But in reality, they are not so. Externally, they look like that. For example, you can see Einstein with his hair and with his ordinary dress, he looks like an ordinary person. The wisest of the person and the most ordinary fool on this earth, they look alike. But you can know the difference between the internal thing in them. The wisest man also look like a fool. The highly evolved, the highest wise man also looks like an ordinary fool. And the ordinary fool also look like him. So can you compare? What is the difference? Well, another example can be given. Now the president of the country also will be guarded by commandos with all the guns, and they will be always moving about 30, 40 people with the gun and so much of cavalcade and the pilot things to protect him. And even the worst of the terrorists in this country also will be guarded by so many commandos with all the guns. Can you compare them? What is the difference between them? He's a terrorist and he's a president. It's just like that. So after having the direct knowledge of both the universe and its cause, they feel the universe to be comparatively of a shadowy existence. So after having the direct knowledge of the one without the second, the non-dual knowledge, they will feel this universe, both the universe and its cause. They feel the universe to be comparatively, this universe to be comparatively of a what compared to what? To the cause, the origin, that is a Parabrahma Swarupa. So comparatively, this universe, they feel of a shadowy existence. The uncommon high powers of their minds then continue to manifest of themselves for the good of the humanity. They have at that time the knowledge of the beginning, the middle, and the end of all things, and they attain omniscience. Just like you can see in Bhagavad Gita, while that conversation of the Bhagavad Gita was going on the battlefield, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, so whenever there is decline in the righteousness, I come down again and again and give the knowledge. And that will be taken down by those people. So in the beginning, I gave it to the Surya, then Surya gave it to his progeny, then Ikshvaku gave it to the other thing. So you get all those things. Then in the Bhagavad Gita, he's telling Arjuna, then Arjuna tells, how can that be? I'm your friend and I'm with you and you are with me. I never saw you that you gave the knowledge to Surya and other things. You are just a friend of mine. You are here with me. So Arjuna couldn't understand the greatness of Lord Krishna. He was telling, you are just born with me. You're just of the equal age with me. Both of them were friends, Arjuna and Krishna. And you are telling now you gave the knowledge in your last this thing incarnation to the Ikshvaku Manave Praha. Like that you are telling that you gave that to them. How is that? And Krishna tells, yeah, I remember everything, what happened in my last incarnation, but you don't remember anything. So ordinary Jiva cannot remember anything. But Avatar Purusha can remember everything. So that's why now what is Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, the uncommonly high powers of their minds then continue to manifest of themselves for the good of the humanity. They have at that time the knowledge of the beginning. Here is telling the incarnations will be having the knowledge of the beginning and the middle, that is at the present, and the end of all beings, what will be in future, what will happen in future. So they have the knowledge of from the beginning, whatever when the world started, what happened, and everything of every living being and all the things of the world, they will be having that knowledge. And not only that, they will be having the knowledge of the middle, then also knowledge of the future, what is going to happen to all the living beings in future. So that's why they attain omniscience. They have at that time the knowledge of the beginning, the middle, and the end of all the things, and they attain omniscience. Omniscience in Sanskrit is sarvagnatva, all knowing. Sarvagnatva. Sarvagna means who is knowing everything. Gna means to know, knowledge of everything. Sarva means all. So omniscience. So they will know everything of the past, of the present, and the future, and everything. It is then only that we weak men see their extraordinary character and action. Their ambrosial words infuse hope in us and also indicate to us that the intuition of the absolute, which brings about the immediate knowledge of the cause of the universe, is not possible until we have eliminated all the mental modifications caused by the perception of the external world and its objects. It is then only that we weak men see their extraordinary character and action. Their ambrosial words infuse hope in us and also indicate to us that the intuition of the absolute, which brings about the immediate knowledge of the cause of the universe, is not possible until we have eliminated all the mental modifications caused by the perception of the external world and its objects. The reader, well versed in Western learning, Western education, will say, everything is spoiled now. Why? You have only made your position weak by speaking like the frogs in the well of the fable. He who knows how far man's knowledge has progressed and is daily progressing as a result of investigation into the objects of the external world, living and non-living, can never accept what you say. To this, we reply, Shardanandaji Maharaj, if the modern day Western educated person, if he raises an objection in this pattern, what is the objection which the reader who is well versed in Western education, Western learning will say? You have only made your position weak by speaking like the frog in the well of the fable. He who knows how far the man's knowledge and has progressed and is daily progressing as a result of investigations into the objects of the external world, living and non-living, can never accept what you say. To this objection, Shardanandaji Maharaj is giving now the reply. To this, we reply, we admit that what you say about the progress of material sciences, but the ultimate truth can never be realized by your universe as insentient or as an entity inferior to. So what is the answer given to the objection? Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, to this we reply, we admit what you say about the progress of material sciences, but the ultimate truth can never be realized by you through them. By this external progress of the science and everything, you cannot comprehend the incomprehensible. Yesterday in the Bhagavad Gita, while discussing, we got the name Aprameya. In that 18th verse of the second chapter, Lord Krishna is telling about our Atman. He was describing about the real nature of the Atman. So in that, Lord Krishna is using the word Aprameya. What is Aprameya? Immeasurable, which cannot be comprehended by our senses or by any instrument of the science, because it is the eternal subject and nobody can objectify it. So likewise here, Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling the same thing. We admit what you say about the progress of material science, but the ultimate truth, Aprameya, which cannot be comprehended, which cannot be measured, which cannot be experienced by the senses or any instrument of the future. Whether you take a electronic microscope or you take a electronic telescope or you may take a digital telescope or a digital microscope, you cannot comprehend that, you cannot objectify it, you cannot know that. That is what Shardananda Maharaj is telling. We admit what you say about the progress of material science, but the ultimate truth can never be realized by you through them. For you are content to look upon the cause of the universe as insentient or as an entity inferior to and less in consequence than yourself. And with the progress of science, you have made the ever increasing enjoyment of sights. Your only goal is ever increasing enjoyment of sights, tastes, etc. The only aim of your life. Therefore, even if it can be proved in the future with the help of the scientific method that all the things in the world, sentient and insentient, owe their origin to one single insentient substance, the truths of the subjective realm will remain uninvestigated, unverified, and forever hidden from you. Without the renunciation of desires, again I will repeat it, without the renunciation of desires and the consequent attainment of the inward looking tendency of the mind, which is possible if desires are multiplied, which is impossible if the desires are multiplied, you can never know the transcendent and the indivisible truth and gain the strength of conviction and freedom resulting from it. It has been said that all the incarnations were from time to time elevated to high states of spiritual awareness from their very childhood. For example, from time to time, Krishna made his parents and friends realize his divinity in various ways, even in his childhood. Now, Krishna Janmashtami is fast approaching. The birth of that great incarnation, Krishna, is fast approaching. Krishna Janmashtami is in the next month. So, we are going to conduct from our Johannesburg Ashrama that 7 days of Krishna Janmashtami satsang will be there in the evenings. So the invitation will be sent to everybody. There will be talk on different aspects of Krishna, and there will be bhajans and all the other things, Gita chanting. So all are welcome to that. So now Krishna Janmashtami, the divine incarnation, great incarnation, is fast approaching. So it has been said that all the incarnations were from time to time elevated to high states of spiritual awareness from their very childhood. For example, from time to time, Krishna made his parents and friends realize his divinity in various ways, even in his childhood. While strolling in the garden, Buddha entered into ecstasy under the holy fig tree in his childhood and attracted the notice of gods and men. Jesus attracted sylvan birds in his childhood by the power of his love and fed them with his own hands. Shankaracharya, while a boy, impressed and consoled his mother by spiritual power and renounced the world. In his early years, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became inspired with spiritual emotions and gave the indication that a lover of God sees the manifestation of God in all things, good or bad. There is no lack of such events in the Master's life also. We mention a few here as example for the reader to understand the point. From these words recounted by the Master himself, we understand that he had the experience of this mergence of his mind in the world of ideas, even from very early in life. He said, in the part of the country, Kamarpukur, children are given parched rice to eat in small baskets. Those who have no such baskets in their houses eat it from the fold of their cloth. We as children, you also as children, you might have done that. You will have an upper garment like the shirt or something like the t-shirt or whatever. So when any eatable things are given, you don't have anything to hold it. Then you hold that thing in the lower part of the shirt or that garment, upper garment, and then in one hand you hold that part of the upper garment, and then with the other hand you go on eating, munching whatever is given by your mother or somebody. So likewise, Ramakrishna is also now he's telling about his experience in Kamarpukur. In the part of the country, Kamarpukur, children are given parched rice to eat in small baskets. Those who had no such baskets in their houses eat it from the fold of their cloth while loitering about in the fields. So moving around while loitering about in the fields, they'll be eating. Some boys eat it from the baskets and others from the fold of their cloths. I was then 6 or 7. Ramakrishna is telling about his own experience. I was then 6 or 7 years old. One morning, I took the parched rice in a small basket and was eating it while walking on the narrow balks in the corn fields. You know, the paddy fields, they will be giving very narrow ridges, or that it's called balks, BALKS, balks. So, in that field, corn fields, it was the month of Jeshta or Ashada. In one part of the sky, there appeared a beautiful black rain cloud. I was looking at it while eating the rice. Very soon, the cloud covered almost the whole sky. When a flock of milk white cranes, that is dark sky about to give the rain, and in the background of that dark cloud, now below the white, milk white, not ordinary white, the milk white crane, Bakapakshi, flew against the background of that that I became very soon absorbed in an extraordinary mood. Such a state came on me that my external consciousness was lost. I fell down and the rice got scattered near the bulk. The puffed rice was all scattered. He fell unconscious. People saw this and carried me home. This was the first time that I had lost external consciousness in ecstasy. Now, we shall stop the discussion of the introduction to the sadhaka, that is the attitude of a sadhaka in incarnations, the attitude of spiritual aspirant in an incarnation. So we have studied that in detail. We will stop that here and then we will go to the proper life of Sri Ramakrishna. The aim of master sadhana, spiritual practices, the aim of master's spiritual practices, sadhana, was not attainment of peace only in his own life. It is not for himself. He had that in abundance. The Divine Mother made him assume a body for the good of the world, Loka Kalyana. He had therefore to be acquainted with the sadhanas of all religions and their ultimate goal, so that he might be in a position to become a true spiritual leader, true spiritual teacher. Therefore, an extraordinary effort is seen on the master's part to ascertain by actual practices the truth or the falsity of all the religious doctrines. Now, that's why you can see why Ramakrishna is practicing after attaining the highest. He still wants to continue with the sadhana. So we want the reason for that. That was why there was no cessation of the sadhana even after he had personally attained peace, the highest. The more we proceed to study this extraordinary life, the more clearly shall we see how, with a view to accomplishing the specific end mentioned above, the Universal Mother brought to the Master at the proper time perfected men and scholars of every denomination. By putting them directly under their instructions, she made him acquainted with the teachings and disciplines of various religions, which, with his rare spiritual genius, he could master very quickly and remember always, thanks to his wonderful retentive memory. In the beginning of the life itself, we have seen Ramakrishna had this photographic memory, retention power, which in Sanskrit is called as Shruti Dhara. Shruti Dhara means who is having a photographic memory. Once you see, once you hear, you will never forget in your life. That perfect memory is called Shruti Dhara, the perfect retentive memory, wonderfully retentive memory. So we have said before that during the first 4 years of the sadhana, the master depended for God realization mainly on his intense eagerness, his own self-effort. So what was that self-effort? What was the sadhana with which he could go forward so quickly? That is intense eagerness. So that's why Ramakrishna used to tell again and again, what you want in spiritual life is not a very good path you have chosen. Yeah, you may think that, oh, you are born in Hinduism, you're born in this high, very high spiritual path, and also you have got the greatest, very great guru, the Sangha Guru of Vice President or President of the Ramakrishna Order, or anybody for that, a very high Guru, realized soul. What is that to you? If you don't make use of that and realize the aim, what is the use of choosing the being born in the or choosing the right path and also getting a very good guru until unless you put in the effort, extraordinary effort, and realize the goal? What is that to anybody? That's why the important thing you want, whether you might have chosen a wrong path, you might have chosen a very ordinary guru, but important thing is your eagerness, your sincerity, whichever path you may choose. The important thing is your sincerity and eagerness. Vyakulata. Vyakul. That is Vyakulata. I told you, I gave the example of that intense longing for God. Intense longing for what you have lost. I gave the example of the baby and the mother lost the child, the small child in the fair, and how she searched for that baby day and night until she found it back. So she has lost a very precious thing, her own child. Likewise, we all of us have lost that precious thing of ours. It is God. It is more precious than the baby. It is more precious than ourselves. It is more nearer to us. We have lost it. So now, how should be the longing? What should be the longing? So Ramakrishna gives a very beautiful example, that telling that none of us are real believers of God. We are not at all theists, believers in God. We are not astikas at all. None of us are believers in God. You may be shocked, isn't it, by this statement of Ramakrishna that we are all, none of us are believers in God. Then if somebody asks, prove it, then Ramakrishna proves this by an example. He tells, now let us hope there is a very, very costly pot of gold with all the nuggets, diamonds, the costly stones, the costliest diamonds in that golden jar. And that jar is there inside a room which doesn't have windows, which doesn't have door, and there is no protection, no security. Now, if a thief comes to know, what will he do? Will he keep quiet? Will he sleep, enjoy the siesta, eat nice and sleep? No. The moment he comes to know there is that valuable thing, the whole day he will put on the sketch. He will draw a plan. Plan for what? How shall I steal that? How shall I take it away? How shall I make it my own? So he becomes restless. The whole day he will be restless, planning in different ways. So the moment it becomes dark, so he rushes there and steals it. He will not waste even a single moment. And what are we doing? We know that more precious than any gold, any diamond, any nugget, any costly stone is that God supreme, the highest. You cannot value it. You cannot price it. Such a costly thing. He is in your own heart. No wind, no windows, no doors, no security, free of cost. You can get it easily. It is in your own heart, more nearer to anybody, more nearer to your father and mother, more nearer to you and to you, your body. Then what are we doing? We're enjoying the sleep. We're enjoying this world, forgetting that. Do we really believe in it? We are worse than that thief. The thief at least believed those things were valuable. And he put in the effort. He became restless to get it. And the moment it became night, he stole it. He made it his own. And what are we doing? Are we putting even the slightest of effort to make it our own, which we have lost? It was our own, the most valuable thing. Are we real believers of God? We may claim 1,000 times that we are all believers of God. If you are real believers of God, you would have attempted to attain that, get that which you have lost. That's why here we have to note the important thing is intense eagerness, vyakulata. That is the only thing which can guide you. So Ramakrishna here, by his life, is showing us in the beginning of his first 4 years of his sadhana, the master depended for God realization mainly on his intense eagerness. There was no guru, there was no other help. It was just intense eagerness to get God, sincerity and his self-effort to get God. That's all. So he's showing that you too, whether you have got a very good spiritual path, you have got a very good guru. What is very, very important is in your life is that intense eagerness. No one came to him at that time to help him in his spiritual progress by guiding him along the path prescribed by the scriptures. Therefore, the only means he had recourse to was the intense longing, vyakulata, intense longing, which is the common requisite of all sadhanas. Whether you are studying, whether you are in the sports field, whether you are in the arts, whether you are in music, whichever department may be, to attain the goal, go forward. For the students, for the householders, for the businessman, everything, the goal, if you have to reach the goal, the common factor is intense longing. Intense longing is the only means. Therefore, the only means Ramakrishna had recourse to was the intense longing, which is the common requisite of all sadhanas, whichever department you may take, any reaching the goal, any goal, the important thing is intense longing. As the master had the vision of the Divine Mother with the help of his longing only, it is also proved that an aspirant may have God vision similarly, even without any external aid. But we forget very often to reflect how great must be the degree of intensity of this eagerness. How great should be the intensity of eagerness in order that one may reach one's end that way. This became clear to us if we study the Master's life at this time. We have seen how, under the intensity of this longing, firmly established habits of life and modes of thought, together with the mental impression at their back, disappeared from him altogether. He paid no attention even to the preservation of his life. You should note it. Ramakrishna paid no attention because the intense longing was so much so that he forgot that he has to take care of his body. His intensity was so intense, he paid no attention even to the preservation of his life, let alone physical health. He didn't even try to preserve his life, precious life, let alone the physical health. The master said, as no attention was bestowed on the cleaning of the body. Now, where is the time to make up, to dress up your body and show to the world, to make it beautiful? Will Ramakrishna now go and put on the makeup powder, snow, and other things and dress like things? No. As no attention was bestowed on the cleaning of the body, the hairs on the head became long and got matted. Jita. You know, Shiva will be sitting in meditation for thousands of years. So That's why it's Jatajuta. You will have that matted long hairs. That's why you can see on the head of Shiva there is long matted hairs. And the present day artists, they will make Shiva clean shaved. All the beautiful eyebrows and all the face, this thing. How can that be of the Shiva's picture? Yes, you can have such picture too if you like it. But the artist imagination is wrong because he doesn't have time to preserve his beauty. The long matted hairs has been growing because he doesn't care for them. He's sitting in his meditation, so there'll be long beard, matted hair. So how can that be clean shaved? Because it's contrasting. Just like they tell in English, there's a thing called oxymoron. It is contrasting. He has a matted long hairs. Then if he has come out of that tapasya and come to the normal plane, just to be marry Mother Parvati, okay, then the matted locks also will be cut. And also the beard will be looking clean shaved. But with a matted lock hair and then clean shaved, it is contrasting. Okay, never mind. Let us not go to those things. Here, Ramakrishna couldn't even bother about his health or good looks or even his body. So now what happened? At the time of meditation, the master said that as no attention was bestowed in that during the 12 long years of sadhana, no attention was bestowed on the cleaning of the body. The hairs on the head became long and got matted owing to the dirt and dust adhering. So it gets matted not because it's a natural phenomena, but because you are not oiling it, the dust and the dirt gets gathered there. No attention is being given. So it gets matted owing to the dirt and dust adhering to them. You don't have time to oil it. At the time of meditation, the body used to become motionless like the trunk of a tree. All the 12 years when he used to do the sadhana, Ramakrishna is telling when he used to sit for meditation, the body would be sitting immovable like the trunk of a tree, motionless like the trunk of a tree, thinking the body to be an inert thing. Now, when he was sitting motionless like the trunk of a tree, so thinking that that was an inert thing, birds came and remained sitting on the head without any hesitation and stirred up the dust in the hair in search of particles of rice. So it'd be so firm in meditation that birds would come sit on his head and start searching for some food grains inside his haze. Because he was motionless just like a log of a tree. Again, impatient on account of the separation from the divine Lord. Sometimes when he used to get that intense pain or that longing, he became impatient on account of separation from the divine Lord. I rubbed my face against the ground so vehemently that it got cut and bruised and bled in many places. Where to care for the beauty of your face, let alone beauty of the face. It is bleeding, it is cut. Why? Because he was so impatient that he couldn't get the vision of the Lord. I rubbed my face against the ground so vehemently that it got cut and bruised and bled in many places. I had no consciousness of how the whole day slipped away in prayer. Ramakrishna is telling that he had no idea how the whole day went off. I had no consciousness of how the whole day slipped away in prayer, meditation, and devotional exercises, offering of the self, and so on. When afterwards, at the approach of the evening, now the evening we started approaching. When afterwards, at the approach of the evening, conch shells were blown and bells rung in the temple for the evening arati, then only I could remember that the day was at an end. Another day has passed in vain. Ramakrishna is now telling what is Vyakulata. What is that longing, intense longing? The whole day is spent in prayer, meditation, and other different practices. He was not aware of the time, he was not consciousness of how the day has moved. But only in the evening, because in the temple they used to blow the conches, evening arati for the evening arati, and the bell would be rung. At that time, his mind would awake. That would be a jolt to him. Ramakrishna is telling, I remember that the day was at an end. Then the heart would squeeze in pain. What was that pain for? Another day has passed in vain. I wasted another day. Another day has passed in vain. And I have not yet seen the Divine Mother. I have not realized God. Another day passed in vain, and I had not yet seen the Divine Mother. Intense sorrow seized my heart. Intense sorrow seized me and made the heart so restless that I could no longer remain calm. I threw myself violently on the ground, saying, Mother, Mother, thou had not shown thyself to me even yet. I filled the quarters with wailing and struggled on account of pain. People said he has got colic pain, stomach ache, maybe intense stomach ache. People thought that he's crying and he's falling on the ground and wailing because of intense colic ache. How can they understand? What is the pain? It is the pain from the separation of the Lord. And that is why he is crying so much. People around, when they heard Ramakrishna wailing and shouting for Mother, Mother, people said he has got colic pain and that is why he is crying so much. Some other people started telling maybe he has lost his mother, physical mother. So he's crying because he has lost his physical mother, crying, Mother, Mother, Ma, Ma, Ma. When we were with the Master, he used to tell us again and again. The direct disciples used to tell. Now Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling that when we were with Master, Ramakrishna used to tell us again and again those events of the time of his sadhana in order to bring home to us the necessity of intense longing. So this is the very, very important thing, the intense longing. In the sadhana is very important. Who is your guru? It's very good. What is the path you have taken? It's very good. Then what is the real thing which we want is intense longing. So that is Ramakrishna is showing here. So he wanted to bring that intense longing in us. That is the direct disciple Shardanandaji is telling. When we were with the Master, he used to tell us again and again those events of the time of his sadhana in order to bring home to us the necessity of intense longing of the heart for the realization of God. Wherever, whichever department, whichever plane of existence you want to attain your goal, whether it is sports, whether it is singing, whether it is studies, intense longing is very, very much required. Anybody can take you from this, whichever department may be. So Ramakrishna wanted to prove to us in the sadhana, at the time of his sadhana, in order to bring home to us the necessity of intense longing of the heart for the realization of God. He would add regretfully, people shed, very, very important, note this, people shed floods of tears at the death of their wives, husbands, children, and the like, or at the loss of worldly possessions like money, vehicle. They shed so much of tears, they go into pain. But who will do so because they have not realized God? Has anybody shed even a drop of water, drop of tears? Has anybody shed even one single drop of tear that you have not realized God, you have not got God? We shed ocean of tears, pots full of tears for husband, for wife, for children, for money, for name and fame, for your pets, for so many other things. But have you shed even one single drop of tear that you have not got God? You have not realized God? One drop of tears, one drop. People shed floods of tears at the death of their wives, Ramakrishna is telling. Husbands, children, and the like, or at that loss of wealth, possession. But who will do so because they have not realized God? Yet they say, we called on God so much and still he did not show himself. We complain. Most of us complain. Oh, we called on God, we prayed to God so much, we did so much of japa. God didn't show to us, God didn't give his darshan, his vision. We called so much, we did so much of japa. as if God is, you can buy God with that amount of japa. It's bhakti, it is devotion, it is intense longing which is required. Do you have that intense longing? How is that intense longing expressed by your tears? What is that you have, you own? Everything belongs to God. Only thing which you own, you can give to God is your tears. Tears means it is longing, the devotion, intense longing for God. Yet the people of the world say, we called on him so much and still he did not show himself. Let them but once weep for God with such intensity of feeling. Let them but once weep for God with such intensity of feeling. And let me see whether he keeps himself back without revealing himself. Ramakrishna is challenging you, is posing a challenge to you. We all complain, yet we say we called on God so much and still he did not show himself. Let them but once weep for God with such intensity of feeling. And let me see, Ramakrishna is challenging, and let me see whether he keeps himself back without revealing himself. These words used to sting us to the quick. Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, when Ramakrishna used to tell those words, let me see how God can keep away from you when you cry once, even once to God, with that intensity, with that feeling. Let me see whether the God keeps himself back without revealing himself. If you pray, if you cry for God with that longing, these words used to sting us to the quick. When we heard them, it became clear to us that he could speak so assuredly only because he had found them true early in his life. He has experienced that. He has used that tool, the intense longing to realize God. So out of that conviction, he's telling the other disciples, he's challenging, let me see, how can God escape from you if you have that intensity and if you cry for God? And we all claim that we have done so much of sadhana, just 1 or 2 months or 1 or 2 years. I've repeated the name of the God 108 times, morning and evening, and I've not got anything. I'll tell you a very humorous story. When I had joined the order as a brahmachari, there was one person volunteer coming there to me in Bangalore. His name was Venugopal. So he used to come and always pester me, Swamiji, I have taken Mantra Diksha initiation, I'm doing it. And 3 years have passed, I've not got darshan at all. I've not got the vision of the Lord. Or even after 3 years, I've taken Mantra Diksha 3 years back, and I'm not getting vision at all. So he used to pester me with this. Then one day I told Venugopal, okay, let us keep that a little aside, whatever you're telling. I'll tell you a story in a story. I'm telling now you a story, and in that there is another story. I'll tell you a story. So let's tell me, Swamiji. No, I was then, I had already got this sannyasa at the time. So I was a sannyasi monk. So I started telling him the story. What is the story? It was the story of a mental asylum. So in the mental asylum, the doctor came new there. He wanted to test his ward. He wanted to test all his patients. The doctor of the mental asylum. So he went about the hospital. He was seeing most of the madcaps there were normal. That means they were mad. But one person was a little abnormal. He didn't look mad, little mad. Exteriorly, he was looking very normal. So he was watching, observing this person. So this madcap in that mental asylum, what was the thing he was doing? He used to stand near the wall of that ward, and he used to put his ears inside to the wall like this. Both the one of the ears used to keep, and both the hands used to cover and hear something in the wall continuously. So the doctor is watching him 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour. He is just putting the hands like this of the ears on both the things and focusing from the wall. He's hearing something. You could see his face was so much of joy. He's hearing something from the wall. The doctor got curious. What is he hearing so much? Watching him. So many hours have passed and he's still hearing and enjoying. Let me go and see. What is he hearing? So he went behind him and near the same wall, very close to him, he too put his hands, put the ears to the wall and started hearing. 1 minute passed, 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The doctor got very much upset. What is this? I'm hearing for 15 minutes and I couldn't hear this fellow. He's there standing there. So he pushed him, dhakka diya. He pushed him. And then he asked him with a very firm voice, what are you hearing for so much? I tried to hear for 15 minutes and I couldn't hear anything. What are you doing here with your ears to the wall? Then the madcap stood up laughing and told, oh, doctor, I'm hearing for 15 hours and I couldn't hear anything. And you have just tried to hear for 15 minutes and you can hear something. For 15 hours, I'm standing here and I couldn't hear anything. And you have just only tried to hear for 15 minutes. And how can you hear something? That was the reply of that madcap. Then that fellow told, okay, I've also become a madman by following him. Whatever. Then after telling that, I told this volunteer of ours, what is that? See, I have got Mantra Diksha past 13 years. At the time I had finished 13 years of my sadhana. I have had the Mantra Diksha for 13 years, 1-3. And I have not got anything. And you have got Mantra Diksha only for 3 years. And you want to get something. Then the volunteer became very much upset that he went away. After that, he would not ask me. So here, what is very, very important is that intensity, the longing. Have you got that longing? And what should be the longing? And Ramakrishna is challenging us. Let them, but once weep for God with such intensity of feeling. And let me see whether the Lord will keep himself back without revealing himself. These words used to sting us to the quick. When we heard them, it became clear to us that he could speak so assuredly only because he had found them true early in his life. The master did not rest satisfied with having only the vision of the Divine Mother. During the first 4 years of his sadhana, his mind was naturally attracted towards Raghuvira, his family deity. After he had had the vision of the Divine Mother, when he was in the Bhavamukha, knowing that with the help of the devotion, it was possible to have, like Mahavira. Who is Mahavira? Lord Anjaneya or Hanuman. Another name for Hanuman is Mahavira. Like Mahavira, the vision of Ramachandra, I too want to have. He engaged himself in sadhana, assuming what is that bhava or his mental longing. What was that mental state? He assumed the bhava of Mahavira, attitude of Mahavira, that is Anjaneya, Hanuman, for the purpose of attaining perfection in Dasya Bhava. So, what is this Dasya Bhava? This is an attitude of servitude, just like I am the servant and the Lord is the master. So, establishing relationship with God in this pattern is called Dasya Bhava. Dasya means servitude, slavery. Dasa means servant. Dasya means servitude. So by servitude, by having a relationship with God, that I am the Dasa, servant, and O Lord, you are the master. So establishing relationship or with this attitude approaching God is called Dasya Bhava. Hanuman is the best example, the ideal. As I told you, all gods and goddesses in our 330 million gods in our Hindu pantheon, they represent, they show in front of us different ideals. So the ideal which Hanuman has shown us is the relationship he had with his Lord Ramachandra as servant and master. So he is the servant, Hanuman, and Ramachandra is the master, the Lord is the master. Likewise, we can also, if you like it, you can establish relationship with God with this attitude. There are 5 main attitudes. There may be much more you can assume because as many people, so many paths. You can assume even your own different path, but they all come into these 5 categories. So Dasya Bhava is this relationship. See, in the world, these are all the relationship with which we establish with other people and live in this world for enjoyment, to earn our money and all other things. So other relationship is, after this Dasya Bhava, you have the Sakhya Bhava. What is the Sakhya? Friendship. Just like Arjuna had that relationship with Krishna, and also Sudhama had the relationship in his Gurukula when he was studying with Lord Krishna in Sandipini in Madhya Pradesh. If you go to Ujjain Mahakaleshwar, some 60 kilometers away from there, you have the Sandipini Gurukula, the university in which Sri Krishna studied. So then Sudama was his close friend there. So Sudama's relationship with Lord Krishna is that of friendship. So that is called Sakhya Bhava, Sakha, Sakhi. You can establish your relationship with the Divine Mother as a friend or with the Lord as your friend. So that is called Sakhya Bhava, friendship attitude. So you can go to God and establish relationship in that Bhava and realize Him. What is the other Bhava? Shanta Bhava, absence of enmity. So Shanta Bhava is absence of enmity with God. So not having the attitude of a enemy with God, just like Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, Kamsa, and all these demons, they had this relationship of hatred and enmity with God, and they had attained to God in a different way. They meditated God in a different way through hatred. Constant meditation comes out by always thinking of Krishna. So, not having relationship as an enemy or hatred with love, that is called Shanta Bhava. The rishis and munis of the yoga, they had this relationship, Shanta Bhava, with the Lord. So we have finished 3 bhavas, 3 relationship. What is the other one? Then it is Vatsalya Bhava. What is this Vatsalya Bhava? Vatsalya means the affection, the love which the mother or father show to their children. So that is called Vatsalya Bhava. Affection and love the parents show to the children. So you can assume the attitude that you are either the father or mother and then establish relationship with God, the God being your child as your child. You may assume the attitude of father, you may assume the attitude of mother and think that God is your child and then establish relationship and realize God like that. Yashoda, she was not the real mother. Devaki was the real mother of Krishna, but she established that relationship with Krishna as his mother, Yashoda and Krishna. So even Nanda had that relationship of father with Krishna. Rama's father, Dasharatha, is ideal for father having that relationship with Krishna, with Rama. And Kausalya, Sumitra and other mothers also had that attitude of mother towards Ramachandra. So this is called Vatsalya Bhava. You can also assume, even if you are a male, internally you can have the attitude that you are a mother and establish the relationship with God as your child or your father. Even the ladies can establish the relationship as father, thinking that you are the father, whatever. It is natural that the ladies can feel that, mothers can feel that you are the mother of the Lord and establish relationship and feed him, dress him, do all the things like that. And male people can assume the attitude they're their fathers. So that is called Vatsalya Bhava. Then there is another Bhava called Madhura Bhava. So we have finished all the 5. The Madhura Bhava is establishing relationship with God as the husband. We, the living beings, are the wives. And the Lord is the master, is the husband. So the relationship, the lover's relationship with God. I'm the lover and the Lord is the loved one, beloved. So establishing that loving relationship with God is called Madhura Bhava. So you can, whichever suits you, whichever you like, even other than that, you can establish. There are so many in between, like God is my father and I am the child, and God is my mother and I am the child, which Ramakrishna started with. So like that, you can establish any type, like your brother, God being your brother, your sister, whatever. You are free. That is the speciality of Hinduism. A lot of freedom in spiritual life. Whatever you can do. But what is the important thing is intense longing, intensity. That is very, very important. So here, Ramakrishna now is thinking to establish relationship and realize Ramachandra like that of like that of Hanuman, the Dasya Bhava. So he wanted to take up that and realize Ramachandra, because Ramachandra, Raghuvira was his family deity. So let me realize Ramachandra in this form. That is Dasya Bhava, like Hanuman, establishing, having the attitude or relationship with God like that of a servant with the master. So now Ramakrishna is thinking of it, knowing that with the help of devotion, it was possible to have like Mahavir, that Hanuman, the vision of Ramachandra. In Hanuman Chalisa, you get the name Mahavir Jab Naam Sunave, Bhuta Preta Nikat Nahi Ave. In the Hanuman Chalisa, you get that Mahavir is the name of Hanuman. So Ramakrishna is thinking, knowing that with the help of devotion, it was possible to have, like Mahavir, the vision of Ramachandra. He engaged himself in sadhana, assuming Mahavir's attitude for the purpose of attaining perfection in Dasya Bhava. Perfection in Dasya Bhava, that is establishing relationship with God as the master and me, the Jiva, as the servant. The master said that, thinking of Mahavir incessantly at that time. So now he assumed the attitude of Mahavir. It just didn't stop to assume it mentally, even physically, mentally, in all his behavior. He started imagining that he is Hanuman. So the master said that, thinking of Mahavir incessantly, at that time he became so much absorbed that he forgot altogether for some time his separate existence and individuality. So now he became so intensely thinking of Hanuman, himself as Hanuman, and to meditate on Ramachandra. The intensity was so much that he forgot his own real existence, that he is Ramakrishna, he is Gadadhar, he is a child of Kshudiram and Chandramani Devi. Now he is the Pujari of the Dakshineshwar temple. He has realized Kali. All that thing he totally forgot. So whatever he used to take up, anything for that sake, he would get totally involved in it. Not even an iota of separation from that attitude. So he totally forgot. So I've told you earlier many times what is the essence of all the religious path. If you boil down all the path, what is that you get as a residue? Swami Vivekananda tells that in Karma Yoga, the essence of all religious paths or religion or any path to God is perfect self abnegation. What is that perfect? You know in English what is perfect. Self, that is ego or selfishness. Negation means removal. Abnegation means complete removal. So complete removal of your ego or selfishness is the goal, is the essence, is the basics of spiritual life. So now you can see here, Ramakrishna forgot who he is. His I is totally removed, obliterated. He identified now completely with Hanuman, himself thinking as Hanuman. He forgot his own existence. So now you have come to know what is the essence of spiritual life, of all path, removal of ego. But we, thinking ourselves we are great devotees, we make our ego grow more and more and more. We become egoistic. In the name of spirituality, you think, I have taken Diksha from such and such a guru. I have been coming to the ashrama for 40 years and such a great devotee, I should be respected. Everybody should give me the place first. All the food, prasad, everything should be first. I should be given the place of the chairman. I should be given the place of the secretary. I should be given the place of the board member. I should be always respected. So we develop our ego. The aim of spiritual life is to remove the ego, to become nothing. We have not come here to become something. We have come here to become nothing. That is the aim of spiritual life, removal of the ego. And we develop our ego and we think we are progressing forward in spiritual life. We are digressing. We're going backward in spiritual life if you are developing your selfishness and ego. So we should be very, very careful. What is the basics of spiritual life? Now you can see here Ramakrishna is forgetting completely, totally obliterated his ego. What is that? Again, I will read that and make you understand. The master said that thinking of Mahavir incessantly at that time, he became so much absorbed that he forgot altogether for some time his separate existence and individuality. He forgot his separate existence and individuality. Ego is gone, selfishness is gone. At that time, said the master, I had to walk, take my food, and do all other actions like Mahavir. I had to walk, take my food, and do all other actions like Mahavir. That is Hanuman. I did not do so of my own accord. I didn't want to act or show off something like that. It became natural. I did not do so of my own accord, but the actions so happened themselves. I tied my cloth around my waist so that it might look like a tail and moved about jumping. I ate nothing but fruits and roots, which again I did not feel inclined to eat when skinned. You know, the monkeys or the vanaras, you can't call Hanuman as monkey. The meaning of vanara means va means something, and the meaning of va, literal meaning is va means and. Naraha means human being, and human being. That means something like human beings. They are like human beings, but a little changes are there. So that is the meaning of Vanara. Vanara means not monkeys. Don't please confuse calling Hanuman as a monkey. No, Hanuman is not a monkey. Something like human being. Just like millions and millions of years back, there were the dinosaurs and so many other beings which have now got extinct. So likewise, there were so many beings separate, just like human beings, in those period long back during the time of Rama, during the time of Krishna, not much is seen. But during the time of Rama, it was something like 30,000-40,000 years back. In the Treta Yuga and Satyuga, such creatures were there. Jambavan, the bear, Balluka man, bear man, bear and man. This is Hanuman. And Vanara are just like monkey or something, but human beings, having tail and other features, but like human beings. Vanara. Then there was Kim Nara. Kim means what? Nara means human being. Are they human beings? Kim Purusha. Kim means again what? Purusha means human being. What are they human beings? Something like human beings. Tumbura, Narada's friend, another great person who used to sing, a great singer. So then Yaksha, they were also a little higher than human beings. Naga, they were like snakes. They have the tendencies of snake, but human beings, more than greater than the human beings. Naga, Yaksha, Kinnara, Kimnara. So all these were different beings. They may be there, not seen to us. Somewhere in Bhutan and Himalayas, many people have told that they have seen human being like thing with lot of hairs on the body moving about. They are called. They name it. What is that name? I forgot the name. The Himalayas, they are found just like human beings, bigger than the human beings, very big in size. So many people see it in and around that Bhutan and that area of Himalayas. They see it. Forgot the name. I will tell you afterwards when I. Yeti, you are right. Yetis. So Yetis. So like that, you can see even now such beings existing. So at that time, Hanuman was like that. So he was not a monkey. You should not confuse that it's monkey. Vanara means not monkey. Something in between, like in the process of progression, you might have seen that evolution from the monkey, it came to the human beings, then it was walking on four, then stood up, the back bending and again straight, and then walking, no tail. So during that period, there may be so many living beings coming up like that. So it was like that. So Vanara, it's not, don't confuse that as monkey. Somehow people go on telling that Hanuman is monkey. It's Vanara. That's a different type of beings. Maybe they are extinct, but Hanuman is Chiranjeevi. Chiranjeevi means eternally living, is still there. So if you call Hanuman with great devotion, here people in South Africa, you see they're very highly devoted to Hanuman. Any difficulty, any problem they get, they will do Hanuman Chalisa. They take recourse to Hanuman. They love Hanuman like anything. I'm surprised to see that devotion to Hanuman. In Ramayana, they were always reading this Ramayana and Hanuman. So much of devotion, really, that is to be appreciated. So if you longingly call, then you can see Hanuman in that picture. Then you can ask him, what is he? So, but don't confuse that. It is not just like something between, in between monkey with a like a monkey, like a tail, but human beings. So it is Va Nara. Nara means human beings. Va means and. Is it like a human being? Something like that. So at that time, the master said, I had to walk, take food, and do all the actions like Mahavir, Hanuman. I did not do so of my own accord, but the actions so happened of themselves. I tied my cloth round my waist so that it might look like that a tail and moved about jumping. I ate nothing but fruits and roots, which again I did not feel inclined to eat when skinned. So the nature of these vanaras are they will not like to eat. Suppose now when you eat fruits, what do? You cut the apple. Not only you cut the apple into small pieces, you'll also remove the skin. You'll skin that and then eat. Very delicate. We make everything delicate. We remove the skin and make it so many other things and eat. But the vanaras and the other that beings, they cannot eat wild skin. They want to eat it raw. As it is, you add so many other things, skimmed milk, custard, and so many other things, and do all the things and eat. But that vanaras and other things, those animals, they cannot. They eat it raw. Now Ramakrishna also, if given food, he couldn't take it like that. If you skin it nicely, open it, cut it into small pieces and give, Ramakrishna couldn't take. He used to eat just like those vanaras, unskinned. So that's why you should note that during Ekadashi, we do that Ramanam Sankirtan. And when Ramanam Sankirtan was introduced everywhere by the direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, that is Brahmanandaji, on Ekadashi's evening, or anytime whenever you want, you can do Ramanam Sankirtan. The whole Ramayana will be told in the form of that Nama Sankirtan. The whole Ramayana is repeated in that. Rama Nama Sankirtana. Shuddha Brahma Paratpara Ram, Kalatmaka Parameshwara Ram. The whole of Ramayana is brought into that. Within a period of 15 minutes, you can tell the whole of Ramayana because you can remember Ramayana with that Rama Nama Sankirtan. So that is introduced by Revered Brahmanandaji Maharaj in all our ashramas. So while he was there in Kashi and he was sitting there, and the Ramanam Sankirtan was being done, at that time he saw one old man coming and sitting all the time in the Ramanam. Then because Brahmanandaji was a very high evolved spiritual dynamo, he had a lot of spiritual this thing, he could identify that old man was none other than Hanuman, coming in that form of an old man and sitting. So what is the promise? What is the shloka there? Yatra yatra Raghunath, about Hanuman, there is one verse. Yatra yatra Raghunath Kirtanam, tatra tatra Kritamastakhanjalim, Bhashpavari Paripurna Lochanam, Namatam Artim Rakshasantakam. What is that shloka? Yatra yatra Raghunatha Kirtanam. Wherever there is Raghunatha or Lord Rama's Kirtan, anybody is singing the name of Lord Rama. Wherever, by whoever, yatra yatra Raghunatha Kirtanam, tatra tatra, there, wherever their Ramanam Sankirtan is going on, there, tatra tatra Kritamastakhanjalim, Kritamastaka, going down the head, Anjalim, closing his hands in Namaskar, Anjali. This also can be Anjali, this also can be Anjali. Both the hands, closing your both the hands is called Anjali. Kritamastaka, going down his head. Anjalim, Bhashpavari Paripurna Lochanam, shedding tears. Bhashpavari, joy, the tears of joy flowing down the eyes. Paripurna Lochanam. So Hanuman will, wherever Ramnam Sankirtan, immediately Hanuman, he will come Hajir, present there. Wherever, whoever doing Hanuman, Ramnam, Hanuman will be present there. That's why they tell whenever you are afraid of some ghosts, if you feel that ghost is nearby, it is coming, entering into your house, they tell take Ramnam, do Ramnam. Why? The moment you do the Ramnam, what will happen? Hanuman has to be present there. The moment Hanuman comes, can the ghost stay there? Wherever the Nama is there, Hanuman will come, immediately come running, bow down his head, hold his hand, and shed tears and stay there. So if that is the case, so can the ghost stay there? In Hanuman Chalis also it is there. Mahavir jab naam sunave, bhuta preta nikat nahi ave, they cannot come, they will run away. All the negative forces will run away if Hanuman comes. So wherever there is Ramnam, Hanuman will be there. So that's why in our order, in our Ramakrishna Ashrama, then after that incident, we saw that wherever Ramnam is there, Hanuman would be coming in different disguise. So they will keep separate asana for Rama's asana, Rama thing will be there, all Naivedya will be given, very nice cut fruit, all the bananas is peeled and given to offering. But for Hanuman, there will be another asana for him to sit, because wherever there is Ramnam, Hanuman will come. So they will give separate Hanuman asana, and they will keep a the Vyasapita, that to keep the book. For the keeping the book, there will be one stand of wood like this crisscross. So on that they will keep Ramnam Sankirtan for Hanuman, and also they will give one Naivedya also, fruits and water to Hanuman. And how will that be fruits? It will not be cut fruits. It will be all unskinned fruits as it is, they will keep in a bowl for Hanuman. That is Hanuman offering. Because you can see here Ramakrishna couldn't eat fruits at that time in that Hanuman Bhava. When he was in that attitude of the Hanuman, he couldn't eat the cut fruit. He would be always sitting, he will be on the trees. I ate nothing but fruits and roots, which again I did not feel inclined to eat when skinned. I spent much of the time on trees and always cried, Raghuvira, Rama, Rama. Hanuman will be always telling Rama, Rama, Rama. Rama, Rama, Ram, Shri Rama, Rama, Ram. Always Hanuman will be repeating Rama. So Ramakrishna also became like that naturally when he wanted to realize, like in that state of Hanuman. I spent much of time on the trees and always cried, Raghuvira, Raghuvira. With a deep voice, both my eyes assumed a restless expression, just like that of the Vanaras or monkeys. I'm telling it is not the monkeys, but just like that of the monkeys, because they were something like monkeys and human being in between, cross. So both my eyes assumed a restless expression like those of the animals of that species. So it is of that species, that is Vanara. And strange to say, the lower end of my backbone, Ramakrishna is telling, the lower end of my backbone, coccyx, lengthened at that time by nearly 1 inch. When we heard the last mentioned fact, we asked, sir, does that part of your body continue to be so even now? He said no. In course of time, it assumed slowly its previous natural size. When the mastery of that mood of the Hanuman, the Dasya Bhava was over, my mind had ceased. So this is about Dasya Bhava. We'll continue the discussion of Ramakrishna Sadhana in our next class, that is tomorrow. Today now, time has ended. So we'll close the discussion about Ramakrishna Sadhana. We will give the time for question and answer or any doubts. If you have any doubts or if you have any question and answer, you can ask.
Om Namo Narayana.
Om Namo Narayanaya. May know who is speaking.
It's Chan Rupchan speaking.
Chan Rupchan. Yeah, Namaste. Om Namo Narayanaya. Please tell Rupchanji.
In the category of hatred relationship, I just needed to know whether an atheist, I don't think he may fall into that category, because Ravana and Kansa, I think, falls into that category. An atheist is a person who's probably never understood the science of God. So
No. Atheists do not come to that thing, because they neither love God, they neither hate God. Their love is only for the material thing, materialistic things, enjoyments. So because of that, they deny God. They don't believe in the existence of God.
Okay, fine. And
they don't have any attitude of hatred or love at all. Their only love is for the worldly things, material things, enjoyments. That's all.
Okay, thanks.
They don't believe in the existence of God at all.
Is the hatred relationship called dust bhava?
No. There is no bhava. They don't give it because they don't encourage it.
Okay.
They tell that you should not take it. It's very, very difficult and you may be in trouble. But people do that. They got God even through that, because intense hatred also is love. What is hatred? Hatred is another form of love.
Okay.
When you can't get somebody, when you can't get something, then you start hating it. You love it. You didn't get it, so you start hating it. But that attitude is not encouraged in spiritual life. It's very, very dangerous and it is very difficult.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? Any other doubts?
Pranam Swamiji.
Yes, Colin Shetty, please tell.
The story that we said in the last session regarding the hunter and the enlightened monk on the lake, it got me thinking, because we're talking about what Papa and Punya, and I thought how wonderful it is for the hunter that he can just jump in the lake and enjoy the lake and catch the flowers and cut the flowers and catch the fish and walk away totally ignorant of what he's done. He does not incur any papa. Yet the monk who so gently wants to enjoy the fragrance, he reprimanded severely by the voice to say, you thief, and calling him a
smell thief.
And then, but he incurs what's it called? Papa.
You are right.
Not punya. And says it's sometimes better to be the hunter than than the monk.
No. See, now the cows, the pillars, the stone, the wall don't tend lie. Human beings may tell lie, but they are greater. He can overcome that and go forward and reach the thing. But the stone, the cow, they cannot do that. So should we go down in the scale of evolution? Here, it becomes subtler and subtler and subtler. It is just like, I will tell you a small story. In the Mahabharata, when the Pandavas took up the reign of the kingdom and they became the kings and all the Kauravas were killed. So it was Yudhishthira or Dharmaraya who was the king. At that time, two people came with the same mistake. That was, one was the Brahmana from the highest caste who was well read and well versed in the scriptures, and he had done one mistake. And another Chandala. Chandala means from the lowest caste, those who do the burning of the dead bodies. So they think that they are from the lowest caste. So both of them committed the same mistake. But now Dharmaraya, while giving the judgment like a judge, he punished the Brahmana very intensely, while the Chandala, the low caste person, was let away with a very little punishment. Now the Brahmana was very angry. Then he reprimanded Dharmaraya, Yudhishthira, telling that, what is this? They call you as Dharmaraya, man of righteousness, the king of righteousness. And the same mistake we have committed, and you are giving so much intense punishment to me. And to that person, you are given very less punishment. Who calls you Dharmaraya? Who calls you a man of judgment? Then Dharmaraya explained, see, you are a well-versed person in scriptures. You know everything. You have studied very well. You are a man, a learnedness. So now, even though you know that this is wrong, you have committed the mistake. So the punishment is more intense to you. But that person is very ignorant. He doesn't have the learning. He doesn't know anything. He is ignorant. So he has committed mistake out of ignorance. So the punishment was less. But you, knowing very well, you have risen up to the higher level, learned the scriptures, you know that is a mistake and you committed it. That's why the punishment is intense. So in that way, you have to take it. So as and when you move forward higher in spiritual life, then the the idea, the degree of morality and ethics becomes more subtler and subtler for us. That's all. So nothing that we have to go back to that old life. We have to go higher and higher. That is the idea behind it. We have to catch the spirit. We have to read between the lines.
Thank you, Swamiji. Very well explained.
Yes, Colin.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Yes, namaste, Reggie. Reggie, please tell.
Thank you. I just want to find out, when you pass on into another life, do you move into a different culture or nationality?
Depending upon what you have done in this life, the karmas.
Yeah.
As soon as you give up your body, you will not go to any other culture. You will be going through this thing. You'll go to the Pitraloka and other lokas, and you will enjoy your punya which you have done. When your punya is over, then you will be taking the birth. Suppose you have done only papa, then you will go to the lower lives like animal kingdom, and we undergo the purgation, the punishment of the bad karmas. Then again we get back, and then we will get into these things. Accordingly, based on our karmas, attitude of life, we get different culture. So it all depends, varies. It all depends upon the work you have done and the attitude you have.
Thank you. And that means that the punishment will be carried out, so that you
can't call it a punishment. I can't call it a punishment. It is your attitude. You loved that. You wanted that. You are now at that stage.
All right. And so the changes you make in your life in this lifetime itself will bring you whatever you have to go into your next life itself. Say, supposing you condemn other people in other religions and other nationalities, you be very severe with them. Is it possible that you can become that person to renew your healing, your karmas as well?
Definitely. It all depends upon the intensity of your feeling, intensity of your hatred, or intensity of your karma. You'll get those things.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes. Namaste.
Namaste.
Any other questions? Any other doubts regarding spiritual life or today's discussion? Because today is Sunday, you will have some time, more time. So if you don't have any questions, if you don't have any doubts, then I will close the session with the prayer. So as usual, tomorrow morning, we will have the same discussion. Then Monday evening, we have the puja session. That is the science of worship. Class will be there in the evening. Then Tuesday, we have in the evening the Viveka Chudamani, the crucible of discrimination. Then Wednesday, we have Bhagavad Gita. Thursday, Friday, again, we will continue our discussion with Great Master early in the morning. Then Saturday, we have Bhagavad Gita discussion. Sunday, again, the same thing. We'll be meeting again to discuss the same thing. Now, at 9:30, we have the children's Hinduism for children's classes, and there'll be also Sanskrit classes for them. Then in the evening, 4:15, we have the satsang. So all are welcome to these programs. Thank you. Namaste. Om Priyatam Pundarikakshaha Sarvayagneshwaro Harihi Tasmin Tushte Jagat Tushtam Prinite Prinitam Jagat Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishnaarpanamastu. Jai Shri Ramakrishna. Namaskar to all of you.